AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
It's Saturday, the 25th of October. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was a week that saw pressure mount on Prince Andrew over Epstein book. Donald Trump changed his mind on meeting Putin. Boris Johnson pop up with the COVID inquiry, and the King and the Pope make history in Rome.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
This week saw a book published that was written by one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre. She died of suicide 6 months ago, but the book Nobody's Girl caused a fresh surge of interest in her story and the connection between Prince Andrew and Epstein. Virginia appeared in the now famous picture with Prince Andrew, and he made a settlement with her in 2022, but has always denied any wrongdoing. Emily Maitlis, who interviewed the Prince for the I Don't Sweat Newsnight interview, spoke to the BBC on Sunday, and she says she's alarmed at the latest developments in the story.
And so you're left really questioning how much more there is in that interview that we have to now go back and question and look at again. I watched the whole interview again for the first time in 6 years to kind of remind myself of what was actually in it.
Andrew has formally renounced his title as Duke of York after pressure over emails to Epstein, and now new reporting based on the book has led the Met Police to announce they are actively looking at claims that Andrew attempted to get personal information about her through his police protection. The Prince's biographer, Andrew Loney, says there could be serious consequences.
I think that there's a case for the Met to reopen any investigations they have and to be open now about whether they actually properly investigated him the 3 occasions that they claim they did so.
King Charles was in Manchester on Monday meeting with victims and survivors of the Manchester synagogue attack. He also met and thanked members of Manchester's emergency services for their fantastic response to the tragic event. The palace says the King is focused on duty and not the ongoing claims about his brother Prince Andrew. Independent MP Rachel Maskell called for official action to legally remove the Duke of York's title.
I do think it is for Parliament to act. There would have to be a conversation between the palace and Parliament to indicate that the King was willing to assume those powers. But of course, Parliament could press forward with action and legislation if it so chose.
The Met Police are also looking into allegations that Andrew tried to harass his accuser while avoiding being served with court papers by staying in Balmoral. Tory Assistant Whip Nick Thimothy says it's important to show victims that the law is impartial.
These are obviously incredibly serious allegations. We need to set an example to anybody who has been the victim of this kind of behaviour, to show them that they can come forward and that their experiences will be treated seriously by those in authority.
Pressure continued to mount on Prince Andrew with questions over his residence in the 30-room Royal Lodge at Windsor. The BBC reports he paid £8 million in 2003 for a 75-year lease on the lodge, but as his name becomes increasingly mired in scandal over new revelations about Jeffrey Epstein, it may become impossible for the royal family to continue to honour the terms of the lease. In Parliament, MPs have been cranking up the pressure to have the former Duke of York officially stripped of his royal titles and duties, with the SNP's leader in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, lodging a formal motion.
The argument that the government are putting forward is just, it's a nonsense. And you know, see, for the family of Virginia Giuffre who are looking at this and watching this, who are angry and aghast, they must be wondering what planet we are living on, where our elected politicians are saying we can't do this because of convention.
Back in June, Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that there would be a national grooming gangs inquiry following recommendations from crossbench peer and safeguarding expert Louise Casey. However, the inquiry has not yet begun, and this week has seen a series of blows, including 3 of the abuse survivors withdrawing from the process over concerns about the scope the inquiry is having and who might be appointed chair. The only remaining candidate was a former Deputy Chief Constable from Northern Ireland, Jim Gamble, but the survivors are concerned that putting a former police officer in charge is is the equivalent of the state marking their own homework. Tory Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick says it's important the chair is impartial.
The victims are being badly let down. Almost every part of the British state is implicated in this scandal, from the police, social services, councils, politicians who either were part of it and essentially covered it up.
Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips is under pressure to get things back on track, and lawyer Richard Scour says getting the truth for the victims and survivors needs to be the first priority.
We need to look at those scandals in a focused way, and we need to look at individual accountability within police and social services. And I think if there's an attempt to dilute it, I don't think survivors will accept that.
The issue of grooming gangs and the proposed national inquiry remained in the spotlight on Wednesday. The sole remaining candidate to chair the inquiry, former Deputy Chief Constable Jim Gamble, withdrew his name from consideration, saying that the process has been toxic and defined by vested interests. More survivors also withdrew from the panel, calling for a face-to-face meeting with the PM and a judge or lawyer to chair the inquiry. In the Commons, Starmer was defending safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips.
I respect the views of all the survivors, but the safeguarding minister, I think, has probably more experience than any other person in this House in dealing with violence against women and girls.
Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was looking to score points, although the previous Tory government had failed to act on previous reports, which only extended the delay for survivors.
Elizabeth, who was abused in Rotherham, had this to say: the government has created a toxic environment for survivors. They were looking for answers from the Prime Minister, and what they've heard is Labour MPs saying shame at their words.
The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was in Brighton on Thursday visiting a Barclays Bank branch as he tried to generate some enthusiasm for his proposed digital ID scheme. He told the BBC that customers seemed really excited about it and the idea that it would cut down on fraud and scams. Meanwhile, the ongoing row over the grooming gangs inquiry continued, with Tory Shadow Minister James Cleverly adding his voice to calls for safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips to resign.
Ultimately, to get the most out of this inquiry, the victims that should be at the heart of this have got to have full confidence in that inquiry. That is not what we're seeing.
The view doesn't match with what the survivors are saying, however, as 5 of the women at the centre of the inquiry have written to both the Prime Minister and the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. They're calling for a judge or lawyer to run the inquiry, but they're also saying they'll only continue working with the inquiry if the safeguarding minister stays in her role. They say she's devoted her life to hearing and amplifying the voices of women and girls who would otherwise have been unheard. Minister for Children Josh McAllister was also backing Phillips.
There's almost no one else in Parliament with the same depth of experience of Jess Phillips in listening to survivors of abuse. She's got the confidence of the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, and I know Jess, and she cares a lot about getting this right.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has been on the road this week after a disappointing meeting with US President Trump, which did not see the US President give Ukraine the much-discussed Tomahawk missiles. Trump and Putin had announced that they would meet in Budapest for another summit in the next couple of weeks. And military analyst Simon Diggins said Zelensky is in a tough spot with Trump and needs to go for the simplest option.
Even the most basic thing could be a ceasefire. That's something that at least stops the killing. If it stops the killing, then there's a possibility of a talk beyond that.
Things didn't go Vladimir Putin's way this week, with the US President changing his mind on the proposed Budapest summit, and he confirmed on Tuesday that there would be no summit with Vladimir Putin in Budapest, saying he didn't want a wasted meeting. That statement followed a call between US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Lavrov says as far as Russia is concerned, there's been no change since the last summit.
I want to officially confirm that Russia has not changed its position compared to the understandings reached during the extensive negotiations between Putin and Trump in Alaska. We remain fully committed to this formula.
On Wednesday, President Zelensky was in Oslo to sign off on a new deal for fighter jets. Ukraine and Sweden signed a memorandum of agreement which could see Ukraine buy between 100 and 150 of the Gripen fighter jets. Zelensky also had words of encouragement for US President Donald Trump, suggesting that his latest proposal to freeze the battle lines was a good compromise. His comments came as the US moved to sanction 2 of Russia's biggest oil companies. Zelensky was also happy to call out Russia's claims of victory on the battlefield.
Russia's pushing disinformation in media, mostly in the United States today, that they win this war, that they are winning. But it's not true. They have losses. and their economy is decreasing.
Thursday saw the Ukrainian president arrive in Brussels for a conference with European leaders. He was calling for a quicker decision on whether or not to release frozen Russian assets to Ukraine to buy more military equipment, promising that the money will be spent with European weapon manufacturers. He also said he still hopes that Tomahawk missiles could be possible, and he met with Keir Starmer for a summit in London on Friday. When America finally moving to place sanctions on Russia, Zelensky was sounding more optimistic about the potential for a step towards peace.
Ceasefire is possible, of course, and I think all of us need ceasefire. But we need more pressure on Russia for ceasefire.
Putin has admitted that the US sanctions may cause some losses, but said he will never bow to pressure from the United States. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says cancelling the Trump summit for Budapest was the right move.
Everybody can see that Russia is not moving in any way, has not changed goals, and therefore if they don't want peace, then we have to put more pressure on Russia so that they would also want peace, and there is point in meeting.
Donald Trump has been bragging that he stopped 8 wars since he took office, but the ceasefire in Gaza appeared to be broken on Sunday. Israel launched strikes on Hamas targets, accusing them of violating the ceasefire over the failure to return the bodies of all Israeli hostages and attacking on Israeli troops in Gaza. But on Monday morning, after 44 people were killed, Israel said the ceasefire had resumed. The US had been making a concerted effort all week to keep things on track, and Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, flew to Israel to discuss the weekend's breaches of the ceasefire. Israeli PM Netanyahu threatened again that Israel will forcibly disarm Hamas and demilitarize the Gaza Strip in a speech to the Israeli parliament. President Trump told reporters that his administration is keeping a close eye on events.
We want to make sure that it's going to be very peaceful with Hamas. They've been doing some shooting, and we think maybe the leadership isn't involved in that, some rebels within, but either way it's going to be handled properly.
Tuesday saw US President J.D. Vance in Israel, where the VP said things were going better than expected and expressed great optimism that the ceasefire will hold despite Israeli airstrikes on Sunday. A Hamas delegation was in Cairo for talks about the next stage in the peace plan, which would see them disarm. Wednesday saw the UN's International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion on Israel's legal obligations over aid. Israel has banned UNRWA, the UN's Palestinian aid agency, from working in Gaza, and the court found it in a non-binding ruling that Israel is obliged to facilitate aid from all of the UN's entities. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that the ongoing shortage of aid is causing enormous issues, as head of the agency, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, explained.
The situation is a crisis for generations to come. Because of famine, as you know, kids are being stunted and poor immunity, and that could pass for generations to come.
Still to come, the Standout 7 in association with Metro, Angela Rayner's resignation speech and a familiar face at the COVID inquiry.
Right after this.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Welcome back.
It looks like another tough winter for energy bills in the UK, as Ofgem has announced a 2% increase in the energy cap for this quarter. Tory Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho made headlines this week as she confirmed her party intends to scrap plans to get a net zero emissions by 2050. If they regain power, the Tories plan to repeal the Climate Change Act of 2008 and bin carbon taxes on electricity, while also cutting funding for renewable energy. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband was busy defending his government's policy, urging patience as the process of bringing more renewable energy continues.
The reason why going to clean energy is the way to get bills down for good is it's so much cheaper, but There's a cost to building that network. Now, my job is to make sure the fruits of those lower wholesale costs get through to the customers.
As the Tories pledge to cut green commitments, new Green Party leader Zach Walensky is currently riding high in the polls as he pushes his new brand of what he calls eco-populism.
We've had an 80% increase in the entire membership since I became leader, and people are telling me what it's down to. People are feeling hope. They can hear that I'm talking about the fact that people's wages aren't high enough. And actually what we really need to do is tackle the inequality at the heart of our society.
We've already got A levels, O levels and T levels, but now the government is set to roll out a new qualification, the V level. They're not playing Wordle. The idea is to simplify what were known as BTEC qualifications into a single streamlined vocational qualification for students aged between 16 and 19. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson explained to Sky News how it's going to work.
And this is about bringing the system together much more coherently so it's clearer for young people that we tackle the problems we see at the moment around young people who are not in education, employment or training.
There's no definite date as of yet when V levels will roll out or what subjects might be included, although the Department of Education was suggesting that media or craft and design could be examples. It's also going to be possible for students to combine or mix and match between A levels and V levels if they're not yet sure what career they want to pursue. Lib Dem education spokesperson Munira Wilson says there's a lot more detail needed.
I would urge caution on rushing headlong into defunding existing qualifications. We've seen with the introduction of T levels, both the previous Conservative government and even this Labour government have wanted to defund BTECs, which are well recognised by employers and popular with students.
Wednesday saw former Deputy PM and Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner officially give her resignation speech in the House of Commons.
There is no excuse not to pay taxes owed, and I will do so. This was an honestly made mistake, but when you make a mistake, you take responsibility.
Wednesday also saw new inflation figures released, with the rate staying stubbornly high at 3.8% for the third month in succession, although the September number did come in lower than the Bank of England's expected 4%. There was also some good news as the rate of inflation on food and drink slowed, but Tory Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride is unimpressed and continues to propose a return to the days of austerity.
What she's got to do is cut spending. Right. And we set out in our conference how we would make major savings across government, 47 billion. If you do that, then you have the room to start to bring down taxes, grow the economy and get inflation under control.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer promised to smash the smuggling gangs that have seen record numbers cross the channel so far this year. But despite a new Home Secretary and a high-profile deal with France, things don't seem to be getting any better. This week has seen the total number of people crossing in 2025 reach more than 38,000. That's the same number for the whole of 2024. And we still have more than 2 months to go. To add insult to injury, one of the people returned to France on the one-in, one-out scheme reappeared in the UK on another small boat this week. The Immigration Services Union's Lucy Morton told the BBC that the French may have stepped back from their part of the enforcement deal on small boats.
The individuals in France performing the border functions are regularly attacked. Their injury rate is really quite nasty. And if you wade into the sea carrying a big knife, it's only a matter of time before the people on the boat have a big knife that they wave back at you.
The COVID inquiry continued on Tuesday with its current module, which is focused on the closure of schools during the pandemic and its impact on students and their families. The star witness was former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who presided over the government's sometimes chaotic response to the pandemic, which included closing schools with 1 day's notice and no apparent plan. He was apologetic.
I take full responsibility for all the decisions that we took, and all mistakes that were made were mistakes that I'm accountable for and take responsibility for.
He was asked specifically about the Education Department or whether or not he should have fired Education Secretary Gavin Williamson. He declined to answer directly, but did say that he had a number of things he would do differently on reflection. Sky News' education reporter Anjum Pierbakos was a teacher during the pandemic years, and she says it was absolute chaos in the classrooms.
It was incredibly frustrating, I think, for teachers and school leaders who were having to make decisions on a daily basis, like you say, but with little guidance and direction from government, and often it would be at the beginning of a holiday where there'd be some instructions or some decisions that were being made, and they'd be very late in the day.
A 500-year-old dispute came to an end on Thursday, well, at least partly. King Charles made history on his state visit to the Vatican when he prayed with the new Pope Leo XIV. The split between Catholicism and Protestantism dates back to 1536, when King Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church after his appeal for an annulment of his marriage to Catherine of Aragon was rejected. Things have changed since, and earlier this year, King Charles had a private visit with Pope Francis prior to his death, but Thursday's public celebration of piety was an historic moment.
O God, make speed to save us.
You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honour and power. For you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.